So if you manage a VMware environment, you know the deal. All those clicks, day in, day out. But what if you could swap all that manual work for some seriously powerful, repeatable automation? Well, in this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain on the one tool that makes it all happen, the vSphere API.
Here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll talk about a problem every admin knows, the manual treadmill. Then we'll get to the good stuff, the automation engine. We'll look at how the API actually sees your vSphere world, help you pick the right API style for the job, and then show you the exact toolkit you need to get started. And finally, we'll chart a course for your path forward.
All right, let's kick things off with a feeling I'm sure is familiar to a lot of you out there. We're talking about the manual treadmill. You know, when your environment starts to grow and suddenly the sheer scale of all those manual tasks just becomes a lot.
Sound familiar? I mean, clicking through a wizard to deploy one little virtual machine, that's fine. But when you have to do that for 10 or 20 or 100 VMs, it becomes a total time sink, and let's be honest, it's super easy to make a mistake. That, right there, is the manual treadmill.
So how do we finally hop off that thing for good? Well, the answer is by tapping into the incredible automation engine that's already built right into vSphere, and that's the API.
So what is it really? At its heart, the vSphere API is basically a language that lets your scripts talk directly to vCenter and your ESXi hosts. It's the official, fully supported way to control your entire virtual infrastructure without ever having to touch the user interface. It turns what used to be hours of clicking into just seconds of code.
And what can you do with this language? Well, pretty much anything you can do with a mouse, just way faster and at a massive scale. Think about it. Automating all your VM deployments, plug in vSphere right into your CI/CD pipelines, or pulling critical performance data on demand. The big idea here is taking all those repetitive, manual chores and turning them into reliable, reusable code.
Now, to really use the API well, you kind of have to learn to think like the API. And that means understanding how it organizes every single piece of your data center into something called an object model.
And honestly, this is the perfect way to picture it. Everything in your vSphere environment, every single VM, every host, every network switch is what's called a managed object, and it's filed away neatly in a very specific hierarchical structure.
This hierarchy is basically the roadmap your code is going to follow. So, for example, your script might start by finding a data center object. From there, it can drill down to a specific host system, and then, inside that host, it finally gets to the virtual machine object that you actually want to power on. It's this predictable structure that lets you target and control absolutely everything with precision.
Okay, so here's where it gets interesting. It turns out there isn't just one vSphere API. VMware actually gives you two main flavors to pick from, and each one is designed for different kinds of needs and, well, different tastes.
On one side, you have the original, the classic, the vSphere Web Services API, also known as the Vim API. Think of this as the old-school, super established option. It uses SOAP and XML, which is a very formal, structured way of communicating, but that's what gives it its incredible backwards compatibility. On the other side, you've got the newer vSphere Automation API, or VAPI. This is a modern, RESTful API that speaks JSON, which is way more lightweight and easier for us humans to read. For most modern automation tasks, this is the one developers find simpler and faster to work with.
All right, so you get the concept. You've seen the different styles, but how do you actually start using the thing? Let's talk about your developer toolkit.
The good news is you don't have to build all these complex API requests from scratch. Nope, you're going to use an SDK, a software development kit. So if you live and breathe PowerShell, then PowerCLI is going to be your best friend. If you're a Python person, you'll be using PyVMOMI. And of course, there are SDKs for Java and other languages too.
The best way to think about an SDK is as your personal translator. You write a really simple command in a language you already know, like getVM in PowerCLI, and the SDK does all the heavy lifting, handling all that complex API chatter behind the scenes. This is what makes getting into automation so much more accessible.
And hey, here's a pro tip for when you're just getting started. Right inside the vSphere client, under the Developer Center, there's a tool called the API Explorer. It lets you browse every single REST API call available, and you can even test them out right there in your browser without writing one line of code. It's an absolutely fantastic playground for learning.
So let's bring it all home. We've gone all the way from the pain of endless, manual clicking to the real power that comes from programmatic control.
Let's just quickly recap the big takeaways.
First, remember the vSphere API is your ticket to finally automating all those repetitive tasks. To really master it, you've got to think of your environment as that structured hierarchy of objects. You get to choose your weapon, the classic super compatible SOAP API or the modern simple REST API. And your entry points are clear. Grab an SDK like PowerCLI or PyVMomi and definitely start playing around with that built-in API Explorer.
We've laid out the what and the how, but the real why, well, that comes from you. So take a second and really think about it. What is that one manual, tedious, repetitive task in your own environment that you would just love to script away forever? Because that, right there, is where your automation journey really begins.